You know, one of these days I'm actually going to have to put in the time and get someone to actually edit something together. Do a video on these content labels. It's fucking hell. Okay, well, yeah. Hello, lamers. Jim here, along with my girlfriend-mandated beard. Women are just so weird sometimes, but coincidentally, that's kind of what today's video is about. Welcome to the latest episode of How Does This Guy Still Have a Career? So, this past Saturday, I was at Burcon. The Berlin International Role-Playing Game Festival. Berlin. Yeah, this past Saturday I was there, and it was really great. Wasn't part of the convention, but I was also able to see the Night Eternal. I'd be wearing their shirt right now, except it's drying after being washed. But yeah, it was cool. It's always good being able to find concerts when I go to these conventions. And after one sentence, I'm already going off script. We're doing great today. But yeah, the convention itself was really good. I sold books to almost 10% of the total attendees. And the average sales per attendee in euros was, well, I think only the North Texas RPG convention gives me a better bang for the buck. I still sell tons more in absolute numbers at, say, Gen Con, but if I sold as much per attendee at Gen Con as I do these little conventions, I would no shit be a millionaire right now. But I did have an encounter at the convention that made me think about things. There was this one woman looking at my table, and when I did the autopilot weird horror and fantasy role-playing pitch that I honestly should just put on a tablet and have it autoplay during these conventions. Anyway, she said, "I see a lot of porn here, and all in one direction." And she walked off. And I've been thinking about that the past few days. And I was told a few people had complained to the organizers about my table and everything just being out there. And you would think after all this time, I would have a thick skin about this sort of thing, but it is more accurate to say that I'm just more and more worn down over it. And I'm sure nobody will take advantage of that. I have no problem with people not liking my stuff. It's not aiming to be broadly appealing. LotFP is a collection of distinct voices which all mix together to create a collected identity that will really appeal to some people and completely repulse some. And most people just won't give a shit either way. The thing that sticks in my head is the way the complaint was worded, calling it porn. That it turned something that I think is just a matter of taste into something more than that. The implied idea I was doing something wrong. And the person walked off in what I interpreted as a huff. So it's not like there was an opportunity to discuss the matter. Wouldn't that have been fun, though? But I not only disagree that I'm doing anything wrong by presenting LotFP's work as I do, I disagree with this entire way of thinking about things. Surprise. I had gotten there early on setup day, so I snagged a prime spot right near the entrance. On the other side of the entrance was a table that had all sorts of feminist gamer type merch. And as I'm scripting this, the rest of this I've been thinking about at the convention, later in the hotel, while sitting waiting in the airport. But as I sat down to script out this bit, it had just occurred to me that people from most of the other tables came by to take a look at my stuff and say hi. I didn't do that in return. I didn't walk around to see the other tables. I just sat behind my table. I was there for 13 hours, and I went to take a leak once in all that time. Otherwise, I was just parked in that one spot. Now, I know I'm introverted and already kind of overstimulated because I had to be social with everyone coming by the booth for 13 friggin' hours. But I used to be better than this. I think the past few years of having a number of people in the industry actively cheering for, if not working towards, my failure, or actively trying to blackball people from the greater industry for the crime of doing freelance work for me, it's made me avoid mingling at conventions, because I know those people are going to be at Gen Con, at the UK Games Expo, at Dragon Meet, and dealing with that shit is not why I go to these things. I don't like that I get cautions from convention organizers to not start any shit with people. I don't like going to the to the vendor HQ and asking, if someone takes a shot, takes a swing at us, does the insurance that we have to buy, does that cover that? That's a fun conversation, I don't like having to be on my guard. So I just mind literally my business, and I suppose that makes me seem standoffish. Don't know what to do about that. But anyway, back to the subject. This feminist gamer table is right across the entrance from me. Table next to them was a group, it was belonging to a group calling themselves Queer and Neurodivergent. And I'm just curious if people might have thought there was some sort of incongruity that we would be in the same place. I mean, I bet that I have a different attitude to some things than these other people do. Different perspectives and priorities and all, but that's good, isn't it? If you check out my stuff and it's not for you, okay. There's something different at the next table. And at the next one. All the way around the room, people doing different things. I'm not monopolizing the space, and I'm not dictating that my style be the norm. Unless you're doing dark fantasy or heavy metal inspired stuff, in which case I just might be a tad territorial. Just a tad. I mean, I have some real problems with certain elements of creative communities and their fans. The idea that we are somehow one unified community that should have shared views and values is nonsense. Look, people keep saying role-playing is for everyone, and I agree with that. But the people who say that role-playing is for everyone, they don't actually like everyone. Neither do I. But role-playing, as it turns out, is for everyone. Even the people we don't like who have values we don't share. That these values that we don't all share should then somehow be omnipresent in all the work is obviously nonsense. I mean, for example, I have very little patience for critical theory, especially how it's used to examine creative work. And I mean very little fucking patience. It is a way to look at the world, but it is not the way to look at the world, and it is not the world. And as soon as the language associated with it pops up, well, there's a lot of that in creative work these days, a lot of that being promoted as the correct way to approach creative work as both maker and consumer. And, being the correct way to view the world in general, and I'm not interested. I tune out. Expressing yourself politically or ideologically and expressing yourself creatively are to me completely different and independent things. Sure, sometimes they're going to intersect, but if they're intersecting as a matter of course, you're not making creative work, you're making propaganda. For example, the online news and opinion site that I think most matches my general view is Reason.com. Free minds and free markets is their slogan. Yeah, I'm one of those. But when they do movie reviews and everything has to be looked at through the lens of capital L libertarianism, it is the dumbest shit ever. Just wrecking the idea of enjoying a movie for its own sake. It's just like those jerk-offs that try to tell you that Ghostbusters is really about a small business struggling under oppressive government regulation. What a fucking stupid way to orient your brain. Thing is, though, I don't think this example is any more or less stupid than someone who only sees everything through the lens of, for example, feminism. I am this label and I need to judge everything thusly. Thusly is the word they use all the time, really. But, I am this label and need to judge everything thusly. And it's like, no, you're fucking not. And no, you fucking don't. You have a lens you prefer to see the world through. And it's going to have its time and its place, but whenever I see any cultural artifact, is not it. You are not your lens, and it is not you. So the presence of only one way of thinking in a venue, of work that will only be seen favorably by one particular lens, I think is silly. And of course you should be seeing wildly different shit booth to booth, both in content and attitude, because we are creators. I'm trying to avoid sounding pretentious and saying artists. That's artists with an R. But how our inspirations and personalities manifest in the work should damn well be wildly different from each other. Or else what is the fucking point? Is it our job to express ourselves? Or is it our job to express the attitudes of any possible potential customer? So, here I am talking about LotFP and women and feminism and misogyny, and this is all going to go very well for me. I'm feeling it. I just, people put moral weight on what type of demographic they think a creative work is attempting to target. Now, I don't know if this particular person was doing it. Again, I didn't talk to them. It just, the reaction I had to what I saw in their reaction just reminds me of a whole lot of other things I see. So I'm not assigning these attitudes towards this person. I'm just saying it reminded me of other things I've seen. But it's a factual statement that the LotFP fan base is overwhelmingly male. Judging by who stops by the booths at most conventions, the names on the orders I receive, I would guess the percentage of female fans is in the single digits. If you listen to online chatter, which I'm doing pretty well at avoiding these days, although one does get weak when sitting around alone in airports and hotels, if you listen to the online chatter, the reasons would be obvious. But it doesn't sink into me because my real-life observations and interactions over the ages concerning other media doesn't match this online chatter. I'm thinking of all the times I saw Cannibal Corpse in the Chris Barnes days. They'd always pack out the masquerade, and there'd always be tons of women there compared to other death metal shows. Typically, in metal at least, the more popular the band, the greater the proportion of women in the crowd, regardless of subgenre. It's fascinating how that seemed to work. But those were the days when Cannibal Corpse's new albums had songs titled things like Stripped, Raped, and Strangled, Entrails Ripped from a Virgin's Cunt, Addicted to Vaginal Skin, Fucked with a Knife, and no shit, this is a real song title, She Was Asking for It. When I attend the Night Visions Film Festival and they're showing some sleazy, rapey thing, as sometimes happens, there's always women there to see it. Stand-up comedy, there's always women there for the most controversial comics, the ones that get headlines for having problematic acts or for being rat bastards. And I hardly think I am as laser-focused on these things as classic Cannibal Corpse or actual Grindhouse-style cinema. But there's something about RPGs and how women as a group interact with this medium differently than with others. I mean, the only times I've seen a real bump in women customers is when Zach releases a book, and that has kept up with the new one, or when I released Towers 2. That did it, and I suspect it wasn't Job's involvement that was doing that. And the way I deal with this is by not dealing with it. We do stuff, and it'll appeal to people or not. How is this going to do with that specific demographic? Doesn't come up, at least not in my head. But then I'm from the generation that thinks changing what you do specifically to appeal to more people is the very definition of selling out. The question of integrity in creation and commerce. But at Burcon in Berlin, there were more women than usual stopping by, asking about the game and buying stuff. Comfortably in the double digits percentage-wise. Why? Fuck if I know. I had the same books that I have at other conventions, and I dealt the same way with people coming to the table as at other conventions. But my interactions do have me thinking about how I handle potential customers when they stop by the booth. I figure there are 3 types of potential customers. People that are already familiar with Lamentations of the Flame Princess and are just there for more. People who have heard about LotFP and are taking a serious look at it for the first time since I'm right in front of them. And people who don't know anything about it, but boy oh boy does all that cover art look interesting, can you tell me more about it? People who are familiar, I don't have to explain anything to them. They know what's up already. They might have questions about specific titles, but they don't need to be treated with kid gloves. People who have heard of LotFP but haven't really looked into it at all, I have an opening question for them. How fucked up do you like your shit? Some people get a devilish grin and a twinkle in their eyes, and maybe I'm just imagining it, but sometimes a Ron Swanson giggle. And to those people, I just want to give them a big hug and be like, welcome home. Have you seen The Family Tree and Curse of the Daughter Brides? Look at the note here where the original editor quit because it was too much for him. But some people don't like their shit fucked up at all. Either, maybe that's their preference, or they'll claim they're running for players who don't want to deal with that. Okay, no problem. I can direct them away from that sort of thing. We do have plenty of shit that's not fucked up. But the important thing is, if someone's going to buy something, I want them to be happy with their purchase and not smuggle in surprise shock. I do want to interject that Fecal Lands being on the table does a lot of work. We have a number of explicit covers and titles, but the cover of Fecal Lands seems to draw the eye and comments like nothing else. It's common for a group passing to have someone see it, nudge their buddies, and be like, hey, look at that, and then start giggling. And to these people, I have a step right up, folks, and witness the incredible role-playing freak show for yourselves. That kind of attitude. Some people see the book and make a crinkly face, and I let those people pass on by. The cover is so great at sorting people into those who are going to be okay with what we do and those who need to steer clear. The irony, of course, being that Fecal Lands, beyond the poo humor, isn't really that bad. It's like a normal adventure with a shit covering, but yeah, it's not that bad once you get past the cover, Winnie the Shit is the other one that gets a lot of passers-by attention. I keep waiting for someone to challenge me on white power, WIGHT, at a convention, and I hope my preparations for that don't slip my mind when it happens. But I don't think it's happened yet. Anyway. When potential customer type number 3 comes along, the ones that have no clue what the hell any of this is, I do the top-down description, weird horror and fantasy, and that we run the spectrum from amusingly weird, thank you Kelvin, to, oh my god, what the fuck is wrong with the people who make this shit? Those are the words I use when talking to people. And I think this is an accurate summation of our product line. You'll notice that I'm testing out vibes with people before saying anything of detail or substance. That's my strategy. Me, depending on vibing with people to make money. Yeah, but as silly as the idea of me vibing with people as a sales tactic is, seems to have worked here in Berlin. Or there in Berlin. I'm back in Helsinki now. And when someone is intrigued at what I tell them, I start narrowing things down to see if there's something I have that might be a slam dunk sale that they'll be overjoyed with. I thought two particular comments during these actions at the convention were noteworthy, and so here I shall note them. One woman said she wasn't so hot on misogyny. Surprise. I didn't ask what she meant by that exactly. I didn't go looking to argue the point. A lot of horror movies, hell, the horror genre as a whole, has been tarred with that misogyny label. And if it has happened in a horror movie, it's probably somewhere in the LotFP catalog. If it isn't, we will get to it sooner or later. So I just instantly decided in my own head, don't recommend any of the spicy stuff. Left it at that. I mean, it is obvious just by the covers that there are some real landmines in our catalog for a variety of sensitivities. And if someone voices their preference, it's my job to guide them down a clear path. And hope to hell I didn't forget what will turn out to be an unfortunate paragraph somewhere in what I'm recommending. One guy pointed at one author's name and said that he saw online that some people really don't like that author and asked why that was. I sensed a trap. Again, I'm paranoid at these things. But I decided to treat the question as if it was sincere, which, as it turned out, I think it was. So I briefly laid out the situation as neutrally as I could. No use spinning it. If he's going to buy an expensive book and then go home and read things online that he doesn't like, that I didn't mention after he specifically asked about it, that guy's never going to come back, no matter how good the book is. And after my explanation, some of the stuff he didn't give a shit about. Some stuff he said he didn't know what to think about. I told him I couldn't help him there, but we've got awesome books by that author and awesome books that author had no involvement in. Your choice, customer. To me, there is a big difference between having all this really weird shit sitting on the table available for purchase and trying to figure out what a particular individual might like. I know it confuses people because for some reason a lot of RPG lines try to have, the same tone across their entire product line, and we don't do that. I intentionally make sure we don't do that. If someone sees Don't Fuck the Priest and has a problem with seeing Technicolor pussy slime on the cover, well, sorry, not sorry. We're going to do that thing sometimes, and we're not going to stop, and I'm not going to act ashamed of it. But I'm not going to try to push that particular product on someone looking for something to run for their players who have milder tastes. Still, it is important not to water anything down and not to compromise. I mean, I know my tastes aren't the consensus standard, but how boring would the world be if that's all there was for people? And I still think it's remarkable that people call themselves progressive and go after creative work that they feel like doesn't specifically uphold and promote their preferred social values, sounding just like Dan Quayle having a go at Murphy Brown. To me, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. And once again, I'm stuck in some phantom zone because I don't slide neatly into either the progressive or conservative sides, but boy oh boy, each will enthusiastically come up with colorful slurs to associate me with whatever side they're not on. Just last week, I showed some of my writing to someone without telling them it was mine, and he said, I quote, "There's something about the way this person types that instantly screams libtard and immediately makes me hostile." And from another person I showed the same snippet to, "That quote sounds like a snotty elitist wanker that has lots of inner need to prove to the world he's better than other people." Always good to get the feedback from the people that I run bits of my writing past. The writing in question was me trying to organize my thoughts concerning the recent metal threat controversy from the US. The ACLU's involvement in Skokie is where I stand on that, if you were wondering. What the fuck is up with Illinois? Or cue that quote wrongly attributed to Voltaire if you must. That's what I think about this sort of thing. Anyway. Somehow, I don't think this one-way porn person would have been all smiles and taking out her wallet if there was a bunch of Brad Pittish looking men with their cocks out on the covers, but who knows? The proper way to handle this, I can imagine just hearing you scream at the screen right now, is to have more women making projects. Well, we have similar percentages of women on the creative end as customers. I don't know what to do about that. I've tried the specifically hire women thing before, and it always feels wrong. It feels wrong to me to recruit based on demographics. I don't want to do that. But LOTFP does have an open door policy. We don't go recruiting all that much anymore. Probably should, but refer back to my comments on why I'm not schmoozing at conventions anymore. But the open door is there. I don't give a shit who you are. If you have an LOTFP-ish idea, come on in and let's see what we can do. If you're waiting for an invitation, you'll probably be waiting forever. But if men can approach me and tell me they have a project that might be cool for LOTFP to handle, so can women. I remember the first project that we published that was written by a woman. She had control over who did the interior art, the concept of the book, the cover art concept. It was her project. And it was done specifically as a feminist project. And damn, if it wasn't the porniest thing we've ever published, it was right up there. I think, anyway. We even had a UK distributor end up trashing copies they'd bought so that nobody else would ever see them. I mean, the whole thing fit right in with us, I thought. Even made a decent, very decent per word royalty rate for her by the end of the print run. You know, there ain't nothing in the LOTFP concept that precludes women perspective or participation. But you've got to step up if you want your ideas represented on the table and not have everything made just by us manly men. Regardless, I'm going to keep doing what I do. And this, for some reason, brings to mind North Texas earlier this year, when the convention let me run a couple sessions of the sex dungeon of Dr. Intercourse. Both sessions were booked full, although not everyone actually showed at game time, and the Sunday session had a bunch of people just coming to watch. I even publicly thanked the convention afterward for allowing me to be as weird as I dared, because I was so fucking nervous about how those games were going to go. I was just imagining everything just being a disaster. You know, but running that adventure is something I would never have been able to do at, say, GaryCon, if you read their appropriate game content guidelines, or at most other conventions. But the fact that people had signed up for and participated in those games, the fact that we had observers, showed that people were interested in having the choice. And that's the whole game right there. People are interested in having the choice, and damn you if you say that they shouldn't. And now that I'm done with my main points, let me talk specifically about the porn covers we have. Most sex and nudity in LOTFP is not designed to get people wanking. Something like Don't Fuck the Priest, the combination of beauty and disease, is supposed to be absolutely repulsive. Disgust is the intended reaction. The music of Erika Zahn is supposed to be silly, what with that outfit and the sack butt, emphasized by the girl being hot. The last time I ran into the model for that one was a couple of years ago. Didn't expect to see her. There she was, and my mind turned to dribble trying to say hi and make small talk. I was so embarrassed 5 minutes later. But life would be so much less worth living if there weren't people who had that effect on me. The point is the beauty is being paired with some clashing element. I didn't have it in Berlin, but the sensitive cover art from the Gen Con catalog this year, yeah, hot girl done up Hammer horror style, but then she's all scarred up. Scars from where she'd slit her wrist in the past. She'd been hanged. She'd been crucified. There's a lot more going on than wank material. We've done that sort of thing with Gen Con catalogs before, like the chainmail bikini babe getting impaled on a frozen lake. Lair of the Brain Eaters. We were wanting an old school pulpy kind of image to fit with the tone of the adventure. So we've got a naked girl holding a brain. The intention, at least, is that these things are supposed to supposed to cause conflicting feelings in the observer. Beauty and ugliness mashed together in the same image. Then we've got No Salvation for Witches, which I think has absolutely beautiful cover art. Yes, it's a naked woman, but it's not sexualized, I don't think. It's a view of transcendence. Nothing wrong with that. And if you're looking at that one and thinking porn, I think we need to have a fight. And hopefully you're a very small vegan woman, because I've never actually been in a fight and I don't know that I could win against anyone else. The most beautiful piece of art ever made for LotFP, something so great it should be up in a museum somewhere, is the Robe of Ectoplasm art from Eldritch Cock. That thing is just sublime. Capital A art. If anyone has ever looked at that one and gotten offended, you know that person is absolutely dead inside. So, to sum up, me and my male gaze find the female form to be the most fascinating thing in existence. Period. End of. Raji out.